So there's been a lot of chatter about the election that just happened and where everybody went wrong, where the Republicans went wrong, where the Democrats went wrong, what the respective sides did right. In the case of the Democrats, it's really interesting because, Joe Biden won, but down ballot, the Democrats performed miserably. Now, of course, the people who are mostly responsible for that are Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer. They're the leadership of the Democratic Party. Nobody likes Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer. Their approval rating always hovers around like 30%, which is less popular than Donald Trump, who's also in the spotlight all the time, which says quite a bit, doesn't it? And listen, the strategy, by and large, from Biden and among others, is that I'm not Trump. Let's go back to normal. That was the basic argument. Now, in the case of Biden, it happened to work, probably because of COVID and the economic downturn. I think without COVID, Trump probably would have won, to be honest. But it didn't work down ballot. And one of the reasons it didn't work down ballot is because Democrats have been crystal clear to argue that, no, there are good Republicans and then there's Trump. And Trump is bad, but all the other Republicans, or a lot of the other Republicans, are good Republicans. And so people were like, okay, if Trump's the bad one, and you're telling me Trump's the bad one and the other Republicans are okay, then I guess we'll vote for the other Republicans. And a lot of Americans did exactly that, where down ballot, Democrats got crushed. There was like a 75% chance of them, taking over the Senate, and they're very likely not going to, but if they do, it'll be barely. And Kamala Harris will have to break the ties by voting in the Senate. It's a mess. So instead of doing that introspection and that autopsy, what are they doing? They're deflecting, they're obfuscating, they're acting like they somehow had crushing victories, even though they didn't. They underperformed massively. Even Biden underperformed, even though he won comfortably, he still underperformed from what the polls were saying. Should have been like 351 electoral votes. But let me show you this, because this blew my mind. This is from Shoykat Chakrabarti. Shoykat was actually one of the co-founders of Justice Democrats, and he makes a great point. He said, I knew from anecdotal evidence that down-ballot Dems tended to not focus on an economic message in 2020, but I didn't realize that so many of them didn't talk about it even once. This is so baffling in the middle of an economic depression. What were they possibly thinking? And so you see here, of the 23,000 Facebook ads Sarah Gideon ran this cycle, 0 included written copy with the words jobs or economy. In North Carolina, Cunningham used the word economy 0 times in Facebook ad copy in the month leading up to the election, while running over 700 direct donate ads in state, despite having a robust national fundraising apparatus. As of 11/20, incumbent Democratic Governor Roy Cooper got 264,829 more votes than Cunningham. A lot of the Democrats who got their clocks cleaned didn't even run on the bread and butter issues. So they're basically doing the worst thing you could possibly do in a political campaign. It's the worst thing. It's the worst thing. Let me not talk about any of the issues that affect you directly as a human being and as an American citizen. This is the result of that. I have to tell you guys, Democratic staffers and the consultant class, they might be the worst at their profession than anybody else in any other profession. They are professionally wrong. All they do is come in and give Democrats terrible advice. They truly believe that if you run on stuff like Medicare for All, that's unpopular and that's going to hurt you. Just so we're clear, every single Democrat who was for Medicare for All won re-election. Not just in overwhelmingly Democratic districts, also in swing districts, also in districts that are Republican +6. Democratic supporters of Medicare for All swept. They won every single race. But the Democratic consultants, they'll tell the corporate Democrats, no, that stuff is toxic. You have to avoid it. You have to stay away from it. That's going to hurt you. They truly believe it's going to hurt you if you go out there and tell the people, tell your constituents when you're campaigning, I want to give you health care. We have a pandemic. 15 million people lost their health care just since the start of this pandemic. I want to make sure all you are covered. I don't want anybody to go bankrupt from having to pay medical bills. I don't want you to have to worry about that. I want that off the table. They would say, no, that's a bad idea. It's a bad idea to talk about jobs. It's a bad idea to talk about the economy. It's a bad idea to talk about wages. You could, by the way, in the runoff election in Georgia, you could win on the issue of stimulus checks alone. If the Democrats were to say, in a united front, they say, if we win, Americans are getting more stimulus. You're getting another check in the mail if we win. If we win, you're going to get universal basic income. We're going to make sure we take care of you during this pandemic because this is no fault of your own and you deserve that $1,200 check every single month. If Democrats ran on that alone, they'd win. If Democrats ran on pick any issue involving the economy, just raising the minimum wage. If we win in Georgia, the minimum wage is being increased because it already passed the House. We'll make sure it passes the Senate and Joe Biden will sign it. Make it about the minimum wage. Make it about any specific issue that helps regular people and you'll win. Instead, as you can see here, 23,000 Facebook ads Sarah Gideon ran. None of them mentioned jobs or the economy. Guys, politics is not rocket science. And by the way, it doesn't matter if you like this or don't like it. That's irrelevant. But it is objectively true that if you go to where people are, they like you. If you reflect their values back at them, they like you. Oh, I agree with that guy. That guy agrees with me. So that guy's going to represent me. Okay, I'll vote for that person. That's it. Democratic consultant class overthinks everything. And I do think most of it is because they're just not that bright. Some of it is also because they're corrupt and they have to please their donors. And so you can't please your donors and push for like higher wages because that would mean corporations have to pay higher wages. So it's a mix of like they're corrupt, but also I do think they're stupid. And I do think they really convinced themselves like, Medicare for all can't go in that direction because that's unpopular, even though 70% of the country is in favor of it. 70% of the country, probably over 85% of Democrats. On one poll, it was 51% of Republicans. So they've convinced themselves that these really, really popular positions are actually unpopular. Free college, for example. They've convinced themselves that this is like a bad idea, bad politics. We always fight these battles on right-wing grounds. And you wonder how they end up winning. They'll fearmonger and they'll scare people about the left. They'll never run on a positive agenda because their agenda is terrible, people on the right. So they'll fearmonger about people on the left, and the left just doesn't know how to deal with it. They don't know how to act. As a general rule, Democratic campaigns are platitude, cliche, Trump bad. That's it. Platitude, cliche, Trump bad. Shocker, that didn't work out too well. Susan Collins was supposed to lose for sure. She didn't. Because the Democrats don't believe in anything. So anyway, this is, segment number 9,312 that I've done in my life, screaming at the Democrats. Focus on the basics, the bread and butter issues, the economy, jobs, wages, healthcare. That's how you win. It's the economic populism, stupid. There's a reason why every single Medicare for All supporter won re-election. There's a reason for that. Again, not rocket science. I'm not that smart. I'm really not. I'm just a regular guy with a microphone in front of me. I'm as regular schmegular as it gets. But even I understand this. And also, by the way, drop the cultural elitism, too. Because that's the other aspect of it. It's platitude, cliche, Trump bad, and like cultural elitism. Looking down at their nose at everybody. That also doesn't help. So, anyway, Shoykot's 100% right. These people don't know what they're doing. The entire Democratic consulting class needs to be fired. Bring back the old school, like, labor Democrats, union Democrats, people who know how to kitchen table all these issues. Because what's going on right now is unsustainable, and it looks like Democrats will get absolutely clonked in 2022 at this rate.